Welcome to the Wireless LAN News Desk on January 3rd, 2019. That's right, this is the first Wireless LAN News Desk of the new year, and we're going to start things off right. There are several things that have been in the news in the past few weeks while I've been doing this series on certification exam preparation, but one thing stood out to me, and I think it's always good to start off the year right. Now, there's a pun in there. It's not very punny or funny, but there's a pun in there. We're going to start off the year right by talking about Wi-Fi channels in the news. Now, my name is Tom Carpenter. I'm the CTO at CWNP. If you've not subscribed to our CWNP TV YouTube channel, make sure you do so here, and you can also click the bell to get notified when we post new videos. Now, the topic for this week, in a webzine called dignited.com, we see an article, What are Wi-Fi channels and how can they speed up your wireless connection? As soon as I saw the title, I thought there are probably going to be some problems here. Something is probably going to be wrong with this article. And the reason I thought that is this phrase, how can they speed up your wireless connection? Here's the thing to keep in mind. A channel neither speeds up nor slows down a connection. Technically, what's going on in that channel speeds up or slows down a connection. Now, they use an analogy of a highway or a road here, so I'm going to use the same analogy. A two-lane road is not slower necessarily than a six-lane highway. It depends on the traffic. If there's no traffic on a two-lane road and lots of traffic on a six-lane highway, the two-lane road is faster. So what speeds up your Wi-Fi is the right channel selected for your specific BSA, basic service area, the coverage cell, the area where the wireless network exists. Now, listen to the analogy given by the author. It says, now you can think of Wi-Fi channels a bit like road lanes. Every lane has a specific width, which is mostly equivalent to that of widest car. So you can think of a channel width as road lane width. The wider each lane and the more lanes, the more cars the road can handle. Now, right there's the flaw. This analogy is an acceptable analogy for talking about how we can get more data through a channel by using multiple spatial streams and things like that. But it's not necessarily an acceptable analogy when we say wider lanes are always better. Is that really even true with highways? Think about it. Do you want to build a highway and say, okay, maybe the standard lane is, I don't know, I'm guessing, I'm not a road engineer, but I'm guessing about 12 feet, maybe it's only 10. But the point is, if the standard lane width is 10 feet, and I say, man, I want people to be able to go faster, so I'm going to use the available real estate for the highway. And what I'm going to do is have each lane be 14 feet wide. That's going to make it faster. But is it? No, of course it's not, because only one vehicle can occupy that lane at a time. So wider lanes are not necessarily faster on the highway or in Wi-Fi. And the important thing to know is that when we have a lot of traffic, more lanes are what makes things faster, not wider lanes. And it's also true on Wi-Fi, generally speaking. While we can certainly use 80 megahertz channels in some scenarios and get great value out of it, this is generally why we say go with 20 or 40 megahertz channels, because going wider has diminishing returns on investment. And so just like a highway, that's true also of Wi-Fi channels. So interestingly, the analogy is somewhat the opposite of what the author has said here. Notice it says, the bigger the spacing between lanes, the less chance of collision among cars. Hey, that's a good analogy, all right? So the more space you put between lanes, the less chance there is of collisions. And it's true with Wi-Fi, there's less chance of interference from other channels if there's good separation between them. For example, the old analogy, don't use 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, use 1 and 6 and 11. So the point is that certainly separating the channels is key, of utmost importance. Then he summarizes with the last sentence, the cars being bits and bytes or data running through your road, the wireless network. It's really that simple. Oh, if it were only really that simple. It's simply not that simple. Now, of course, he's writing mostly to the consumer space. They're not going to be devastated by this information. But as wireless LAN engineers, we have to get things right. And when we get things right, we realize wider channels are not always faster because we're thinking about the holistic speed of all participants in the network. So the aggregate speed, what are they able to accomplish on that network so that we can then break that down to an average individual speed on that network. Therefore, 20 and 40 megahertz channels are typically better in business deployments, although there are definitely scenarios where in business, even enterprise deployments, an 80 megahertz channel is called for, but they are the rare exception and certainly not the rule. And 160 megahertz channels, at least at this point, we just ignore them. So the message of the Wireless LAN News Desk is, don't let people that you teach believe everything they read on the internet. But of great importance, let's be careful with our analogies because sometimes they just break down along the side of the road. Okay, another attempt at a pun. It might not have been very punny, but I think it was funny. And I'd like to thank you for viewing this edition of the Wireless LAN News Desk on January 3rd, 2019. And I will see you next week.